Hello everyone, this is Kelly Beatty coming to you live from the Senior Center here in North Chelmsford, where we're going to have the second evening of the spring annual town meeting session. Those of you who were with us on Monday night saw a great deal of important activity to take care of, especially the budget for the town for the fiscal 24 year. That involved a number of components: the municipal budget, the school department budget, and the capital budget, all of which total about $159 million. It's a lot of money. It's going to be spent on a level budget, level services plan, according to Town Manager Paul Cohen and also Superintendent of Schools Dr. Jay Lang. And there'll be about $4 million of that will be used for capital improvements throughout the town. Now, that meeting last on Monday got through 20 of the roughly 30 warrant articles that we have on the docket for the regular town meeting. But before we get to the remainder of those tonight, we'll have a special town meeting involving 5 warrant articles. These are articles that tend to involve more timely, need to pass soon kind of activities. 2 of those have to do with special arrangements with analog devices for funding that they will be able to get, but only if a certain deadline is made. You'll hear that very soon. And then after those 5 are taken care of, we'll move on to the remainder of the 10 articles on the regular town meeting warrant. A lot of those are things that you have seen come before this board, these town meeting representatives many times before, especially the conservation preservation funds, the expenditure of those. These are funds that are collected from the sale of properties here in town. They go into a pool of money, and then that money is dispersed by a committee on special projects like playground equipment or renovating the town hall in the center of town, for example. So those will be discussed. Also, a few other zoning items, some historical preservation, the Center Village Brook Walk, which has been sort of a keystone of the renovation of the downtown area. We'll get to all those in due course. The odds are that tonight we're going to finish up, which is pretty good.
Good evening.
Two-session town meeting is pretty normal. So,
good evening.
In a moment here, John Kerwin, our moderator,
please
will
join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So we are going to be starting our meeting with with the special town meeting, but I believe that the town manager wishes to make a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. Paul Cohen, Town Manager. I'd like to begin this meeting with a point of personal privilege. Given the expectation that we will finish the special town meeting and spring annual town meeting session this evening, I want to take this opportunity to recognize that this will be the final town meeting of our outgoing police chief, James Spinney, who's here this evening. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. So I'm obligated to tell you that the emergency exits are on both sides of the hallway here and at the entrance where you first came in. We appear to be having some logistical, technical issues. We normally would have a quorum count now, but the machine is still in process.
Would you please ask if everybody has an orange ticket?
First of all, does every one of you have an orange ticket? If you do not have a ticket, please, an orange card, please get one from the ticket people, because that may be how we're going to be handling this meeting tonight, or for part of it at least.
past few years, we've grown accustomed to having the computer tallying with electronic signaling devices, and that's on the fritz, and so we're going to resort to the age-old
While we're waiting,
process
I'd like
of
to
raising
state
your
that
hand.
I've checked the service of the warrant, and that this special town meeting has been duly served in compliance with the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Excuse me, sir.
So quorum is half of 165, right?
To see how I'm saving you
We should
money.
be fine.
See this? I used to say 8, but I crossed it to 4. I'm saving you money.
We're going to check, but it appears to me, looking at the room here and the number of seats that are taken, but we're going to verify that we do have a quorum so that we can start our meeting now. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. This evening, we have a special town meeting, 5 articles, and the reason there's a special town meeting is because since the time the warrant for the spring annual town meeting was signed 2 months ago at the end of February, a few items have come up that are warranted your attention this evening. And the first of one pertains to Articles 1 and 2 of the warrant for the special town meeting. And this pertains to a request for authorization to grant a tax increment financing agreement to Analog Devices Federal in the first case, and then in Article 2, Analog Devices Federal and Analog Devices, Inc. in Article 2. And the reason they're 2 separate articles is that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which governs all property taxation by communities in the Commonwealth, requires a separate agreement for each parcel of real estate. About 6 weeks ago in mid-March, our Business Development Director, Lisa Maroney, was contacted by the Massachusetts Office of Business Development. And the reason for the outreach was there is a request by the federal government as a result of the supply chain issues that were revealed during the pandemic to bring home to the country the manufacturing of silicon chips, devices, for both consumer use and, in the case for a company like Analog Devices, making sure we have adequate capacity for chips for military purposes. So the contact was made. It was under extreme confidentiality. It had a code name. Confidential name was Project Onyx, is how it was revealed to us. And it involved a request by the Commonwealth and Analog Devices to basically put us into a competitive federal round of funding that's going to take place this June for the manufacturing of chips, in this case for military purposes. Around that same time, there was a meeting held at Analog Devices in Chelmsford with representatives from the governor's office, our new state representative Rodney Elliott, representatives from Congresswoman Trahan's office, and others, but not town officials because of the confidentiality and the security at the site, were brought on to address this need to seek to secure in Massachusetts manufacturing capacity for this industry, which finds well-paying jobs. This is the first location, 20 Alpha Road in Chelmsford. First, I want to explain what a tax increment financing agreement is, or a TIF in its acronym, because the last time this community approved a TIF was 13 years ago for what was then Kronos, when they did their expansion on Billerica Road at the time, prior to them outgrowing that use and then relocating at Cross Point, where it's now known by the new acronym UKG. But basically, a tax increment financing agreement involves the town, the state, and the business. And it's basically a local tool for economic development, and it also provides them with access to state funding. And the key word is increment, meaning the property tax exemption is not on the current value of the property. They continue to pay the taxes that are paid on the site, and I'll provide those numbers shortly. But it's basically they get an exemption or temporary relief from the increment of the newer taxes that are generated by the investment of jobs and investment in plant onto the site. So again, in this one at 20 Alpha Road, Analog Devices is a wholly owned subsidiary, Federal is a wholly owned subsidiary of Analog Devices, Inc. The property is that, again, it's advanced semiconductor components for defense purposes. The property at 20 Alpha Road is being proposed for a reinvestment of $41.76 million in clean room and manufacturing space and equipment. This would retain 207 jobs at that location and add 111 employees over 5.5 years, where the average salary for these new jobs is $60,000. And this was welcome news to us in the town and business development, Lisa's office, because many of you may recall 5 years ago in 2018, Analog Devices received a TIF agreement from the town of Wilmington where they were going to consolidate their operations and therefore were going to shutter their 3 locations in Chelmsford. The one up in Drum Hill, which they lease, and then the one on Alpha Road and Elizabeth Drive. But because they've grown, and now because of this effort to secure additional manufacturing opportunities here in the U.S., they're going to reinvest, as we can see, almost $42 million into the space. And so what they need and what the federal government is requiring is evidence of local incentives and state incentives. What's out there now is a 71,500 square foot building on 5.63 acres of land. This project does not involve any expansion of the footprint of the building. They're basically doing interior renovations. The building is now assessed at $7.16 million. They currently pay and will continue to pay the baseline of $130,000 in property taxes. And of that investment, what's taxable or concern to us is the $22 million investment in clean room and manufacturing space. Other investment of that 42 goes towards equipment, but in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, equipment for manufacturing is exempt from taxation purposes. So therefore, that's not part of the equation. So we focus on the $22 million investment in the clean room and manufacturing space. And so what we do is, we did it, and then Analog Devices, they hired PricewaterhouseCoopers as their analyst, and we were basically dealing with their representatives out of Chicago during the last 6 weeks on this agreement. And the negotiations and documents were going back and forth, and even we received some additional documents the other day where they confirmed the work from our assessors as being accurate, which is always good to know from a private company like that. So here's how the deal works. They would receive over a 10-year period, because they're going to do the investment and create the jobs over a 5.5-year period, a declining scale of incentives towards that. So basically it goes down by 10% gradient, starting at 90% down to 0 in the last year. And this is the exact same structure that we use when we use Kronos and Hittite before them and others. And the reason we utilize this structure is that as their increment goes down, the town's taxes go up as our costs of governance go up. So therefore, as the town's costs, we're aligning. So I apologize for the small print, but basically we explain how the math works. They'll continue to pay that $130,000 in taxes straight through the 10-year period. And by the way, if they don't do the investment, don't create the jobs because they have annual reporting, then the incentives go away. So again, they're going to invest $22 million, which would create an additional $400,000 in property taxes during that period. And you can see with the 90% down to 10% scale, the first year they'll get an exemption of $363,000, and the town will get an extra $40,000. And then by the end of the 10-year period, the town's up to the $400,000, and they have an exemption of 0. And you can see at the bottom, at the end of the year, it's about a 50-50 split. Not counting present value, of course, but basically they get $1.87 million in incentives. The town would collect $2.2 million over that period, and then the total cost with the current baseline, we'd get $3.5 million. So that's how the math works. Why would we want to do this? Again, we're in a competitive marketplace for this grant opportunity. This would really enhance our economic development program and the branding and marketing of our 129 corridor by increasing the property tax revenue out there for the community. It also avoids what we were anticipating was a potential vacancy by Analog. And again, it's job retention, job creation, and investment for Chelmsford businesses. So again, if this were approved this evening by town meeting, they would then go to the state for their state approval next month, and then they'll submit for the federal funding round at the end of June. That's my presentation, Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 1.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of warrant Article 1.
Any discussion?
Mr. Moderator, to the Speaker, just a minor point of clarification.
John, he has to introduce himself.
Alvin Draymond, Precinct 7.
Thank you.
The property tax is listed as a constant for all of the years.
That's just an illustrative purpose. The taxes will increase over the period, but again, it's the baseline. So again, we didn't do real thing. We basically tried to use an illustrative example. What will really happen is what the assessors go out there and tax. And then the other thing is if there's changes in the classification, other stuff, that all will impact as well. So no, this is not to suggest that their taxes are going to stay solid and static for 10 years.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Badri Upliapan, Precinct 11. Is the investment on 20 Alpha Road
Yes.
alone?
Yes, and the next article will be an investment on 2 Elizabeth Drive.
But this one is just
This one pertains, they're 2 separate agreements, and 2 separate, yes, because we're required to do 2 separate, each property.
You had mentioned, so the question I have is, you had mentioned that there was a separate TIF from Wilmington
Yes.
that was provided, and
That was 5 years ago when
Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
located in Wilmington, yes.
yeah, and 20 Alpha Road was also slated to move.
Yes.
Is that an accurate? Was that the 20 Alpha Road move also slated to happen? And what would stop Analog Devices after the 10 years to move 20 Alpha Road at that point?
They could.
They could.
They could, but what we've been told is that the company has grown, and if they're investing this amount of infrastructure into that plant, I don't anticipate that they would move. But right, there's no guarantees beyond the 10-year period.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Latina, Precinct 9. Through you to the Mr. Moderator, to the town manager. We've had TIF agreements in the past, and I recall that we were going to report to town meeting how those arrangements went. Is this a similar situation where we're committing to 111 employees and we're committing to 10 years on this? Will you report back to town meeting how well it's going, or if they leave? I mean, I don't remember the other one, whether they're still here or not. And that was
Yeah.
a 20-year TIF.
The answer to your question is yes, Mr. Moderator, we'll be glad to report back to town meeting because they do have to do annual reporting to the Commonwealth that we receive copies of that documents the job retention, the investment, and the job creation, yes.
And this is just a tax break on that $42 million investment in a current property. Is that correct, for 10 years?
Yes.
Sounds like a good deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christine McNamara, Precinct 8. I was just curious if you knew if there's any concerns about hazardous materials in the manufacture of the chips and whether that's ever, do we have that type of manufacturing in town already? Have we dealt with that kind of a?
That is an existing manufacturing site for silicon chips.
Okay.
And we did ask if there was going to be any issues that would involve hazardous materials or wastewater, and the answer was no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There appears to be no one else, so we will vote on the TIF for the Alpha Road property for Analog Devices. And it looks like we're up and running. Thank you, Ted.
is a sort of a win-win for the town, and I'm not surprised that it's overwhelmingly passing. It's exciting that chip manufacturing will be coming to Chelmsford, coming back to Chelmsford, and in a very visible and profitable.
The article passes,
Promotable
131
way.
in favor, 2 opposed, 2 abstentions. Mr. Manager, Article 2.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 2 is the tax increment financing agreement, or Part 2, regarding 2 Elizabeth Drive. And again, the reason is it's a separate property. I'm trying to be a little more succinct. There's a photo at 2 Elizabeth Drive if you come off of Alpha Road, right off of Route 3. Again, in this case, as prior, Analog Devices, Inc. owns the property at 2 Elizabeth Drive. In this case, they're investing $21.15 million in clean room and lab space. Here, they're going to retain 158 employees, and they're going to add 22 employees over 5.5 years. And the average salary for these new jobs is $100,000. Basically, this is the R&D site, the Elizabeth Drive, whereas the previous article at Alpha Road is more of the manufacturing site. That's why the jobs pay more and such at that location. So again, no expansion of the footprint. They're basically overhauling the interior. And there's a 106,000 square foot building on 7 acres of land. Here, the assessment is $11.75 million. They currently pay $213,000 in property taxes. And the investment purposes for the TIF agreement is $15 million. The same increment funding scale that we saw previously. And then the breakdown here is, again, they continue to pay off of that base of $213,000, and then that $15,000 at today's tax rate would generate $279,000 of new additional tax revenue. And again, you can see how it breaks out. The first year it goes $250,000, the town gets $28,000, and then by the end the town gets all $279,000. Again, without present value, it's $1.25 million to the company and $1.5 million to the town for this agreement. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 2.
Select Board have a recommendation.
Select Board unanimously recommends approval of warrant Article 2.
Okay. Do we have any questions on this one?
Father Duke from Precinct 11. Have we asked Analog Devices for any other in-kind contribution to town if we pass the TIF for the 2 Elizabeth Drive, given it's an R&D facility primarily and not a manufacturing facility?
No.
Would that not be prudent for us to ask for some kind of in-kind contributions or other relationship with, say, the Chelmsford High School, or contributions to STEM programs and stuff as part of a different negotiating tack that will help Chelmsford, not just a tax basis, but just having presence of something is important? Have we used that as a negotiating tack?
Yeah, I mean, we have relationships with Triton Systems and other companies that Lisa Maroney does, and Analog's a partner with that, but we didn't want to inject into this equation that type of thing. I mean, this was a fast-track issue, but I don't foresee any issues with the company investing. But no, we don't have a formal separate agreement that they're going to, sponsor this program or do this thing. We've never gone there with our TIF agreements. And I'm not saying we can't, but honestly, this was, belt and suspenders. Let's move. We really didn't go there.
Okay, maybe just
something
to think about in the future to hold back. Something investment.
Paul Regazio, Precinct 2. Does Analog also has a facility on Technology Drive? Do they own that facility?
No, they're a tenant there on Technology Drive.
Will there be any change in that location?
That was not part of the discussions. The discussions we had with PricewaterhouseCoopers pertained only to the Elizabeth Drive and to the Alpha Road. This did not involve at all the Technology Drive location. Although I can tell you, we've not received any information from them that they're vacating soon.
Okay.
But no, this does not involve that at all.
So there's no knowledge of transfer of people from? Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? There being none, We will vote on Article 2, which is the TIF for the Elizabeth Road property.
These first few articles on the special town meeting warrant are kind of softballs. They were very widely, highly regarded and very likely to pass. Our next one, Article 3, has to do with motor vehicle weight restrictions on Ledge Road for the purpose of trying to
The article
stifle
passes
some of the
130 in
traffic that has
favor,
been
2 opposed, 2 abstentions.
on there and proposed to be
Article
on
3,
there.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr.
Should be an
Moderator.
interesting
Article
article.
3 is a request for the town meeting to authorize the select board to submit a home rule petition to the Massachusetts State Legislature. And this pertains to Ledge Road, and it would impose vehicle weight restrictions on commercial trucks on Ledge Road. As many of you in the community are aware, the town has been working for a few years now trying to address the commercial trucking problems on Ledge Road that are affecting not only Ledge Road, but the area around Ledge Road and Swain, Dunstable, even out to Groton Road. As a result of the expansion of the aggregate operations out there off of Ledge Road, the quarries are in Westford. They're only accessible from Chelmsford. Newport, which has constructed the asphalt plant in the front on Route 40 in Westford, acquired the aggregate operations from LeMazier and expanded those operations. And many of you have heard at many forums the issues of the traffic, the dust, the debris, everything out there. And I've got some statistics that the select board, particularly with our traffic safety committee, have been trying to help. Just to orient you, for those familiar, Ledge Road is in the red on the graphic there. And you can see it connects to Dunstable, and then you go Swain, Groton Road, and you're at to Route 3. And then you can see the town line is that dotted line that goes to the middle. So that's what we're dealing with in terms of location. We've worked with our partners at the Regional Planning Agency, Northern Middlesex Council of Government, and we have the statistics that document the dramatic increase in commercial truck activity on that area. You can see the statistics in terms of Swain Road, south of Dunstable Road. The counts now are you've got 34% of your traffic is from commercial vehicles, whereas during the pandemic it was down to 6%, and prior to pre-pandemic was 16.5%. And similarly on Groton Road or Route 40 east of Route 3 north, you can see it's up now to 17.6%, whereas if you went back to 2018, it was 2% of the traffic. And Swain Road once was 6% of the traffic, is now up almost to 30% of the traffic in that area. And then this is the photo that was sent to the select board of what it's like to live on Ledge Road. The trucks going both ways on a roadway that was never designed for two-way traffic, for the width of the vehicles. This is again, a dead-end roadway. And so the vehicles are going off to the side of the road into lawns, damaging the roads, the dust, the watering of the roads, and so forth. What brings us to this article this evening is our new state representative, Rodney Elliott, is reached out and is working with the select board, the neighbors, and other stakeholders, and has brought forth the idea of a home rule petition. So at this point in time, we're going to turn the podium over to State Representative Rodney Elliott, who's going to explain what the effort he's undertaking and where we're trying to go with this. So Representative Elliott, welcome this evening. And again, as I mentioned to you earlier, thank you for your efforts at the State House that concluded last night with the budget adoption in the House.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Manager, Mr. Moderator, town meeting representatives, residents. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. As the manager mentioned, my name is Rodney Elliott. I'm the state representative for the 16th Middlesex District. That includes North Chelmsford all the way to Westlands. I come before you tonight in support and urge your support for this home rule petition. As the manager indicated, I've attended, and certainly over the course of the summer, I have met with neighbors on Ledge Road, Main Street, Swain Road, Dunstable Road, Groton Road, and heard their concerns. I've been out on Ledge Road many, many times because I feel seeing is believing, and the dramatic increase in trucks is reflected in the traffic count and pattern analysis by the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments. Upon being sworn in, I did meet with House Counsel to try to come up with a solution, because the options that were presented to the Board of Selectmen and has been talked about, and I realize that I'm newly elected, but just way of background, I was a city councilor in Lowell for 24 years, and I served a term as mayor, so I am not new to government. I've worked with the Northern Middlesex Council of Government for quite some time, and the options that were presented do not seem to be viable. I know that Mass DOT has weighed in, and Mass Highway, and we've heard that an on-ramp and off-ramp for additional vehicles is, while it's an option, it's not practical, or to me, it's just, there are restrictions in the Code of Mass Regulations on exits, the distance between the exits. So I met with House Counsel for the House of Representatives, and they came up with two options. One is a home rule petition to restrict the gross vehicle weight of vehicles traveling on Ledge Road. Or the second option, which I still have the bill filed, is to do this practice statewide. So any quarries in the state that have undersized roads, I will say, would be under the same restriction. However, this seems to be a more successful path. So I've met with the manager and the assessor's office. I did receive emails about an email from an individual that I could not identify, citing businesses that would be affected by this, quarry businesses, and we could find there is one business of record by the assessor's office, a garage, that there is only one loader that is registered, a front-end loader. So this is a solution for the residents. As a state representative, I'm obligated, and I want to be able to help the residents that have been dealing and living through the dust, the traffic, the noise. It's the quality of life, and that's why I come before you and support this home rule petition. The next step is, should it pass here, it has to go through the legislature. It's exempt from Rule 12, which requires any legislation filed after the deadline in January to go through another process. Home rule petitions are exempt. So I am here, I'm committed, should this pass tonight, to continue to work on behalf of the neighbors and the towns. You know, these arterial roadways were, you know, in Massachusetts there are restrictions, and many of you have seen on the highways, there are way stations, and there's a reason for them, for safety, as well as to protect the conditions of the roads. You know, vehicles that exceed weight restrictions have an impact on the roads, and I have seen them, I know that you have seen them, and it's not just on Ledge Road. It is these vehicles that are traveling to Route 3 in some cases, or through Vinyl Square as well. So I think it impacts the entire neighborhood. These operations are in Westford, the gravel processing. And you did see statistics that were provided by NEMCOG, and they increased 58% on Ledge Road, 34% and 17% respectively on these other roadways where the trucks have to go. So I hope you look favorably upon this. Again, these are in Westford. They're operating in Westford, and I know that many of you, most all of you, know the challenge that the Westford went through in the permitting process for the asphalt plant. To me, the gravel operations, the town of Westford doesn't want to open up that permitting process because there would be that many more vehicles going on Route 40. So to me, there is no benefit to the town of Chelmsford. From a financial perspective, it does impact roads and the conditions on the roads that I will say, my personal perspective, the state needs to continue to fund, and I'll continue to work for more money for roadway repair. But it's become the residents in North Chelmsford and the town, it impacts them dramatically, and the operations are taking place in Westford, and they found an alternative route to exit with the vehicles, and this legislation would address that. So thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to take questions, but I'm sure there's a comment period here. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, members of the
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 3.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of warrant Article 3.
Okay, time for questions or debate.
I was going to ask a question. Glenn Thorne, Precinct 7. Representative Elliott can't get away that quickly. So it's a fairly simple question because we realize this is a great disturbance to our town. The process you described is recommended the best way through with the home rule petition. From when we vote this through tonight to when that actually goes into effect, how long will that be?
It's a very good question.
Thank you.
I don't have a good answer for you. I can tell you that once it is filed, it is referred to a committee. The committee holds a public hearing. The committee then reports that bill out. In my experience as a Lowell City Councilor, it's up to the delegation, and I should also mention, I have spoken to Representative Cataldo, who is a representative from Chelmsford as well as Representative Asiero, who represents a piece of Chelmsford, as well as Westford. I've spoken to Senator Barrett, and we are all willing and able and ready to, to work on this bill to move it through the legislature.
So if I could press you just a little bit further on that one question. Are we talking about, and I'm familiar with how some things go through the legislature, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years?
Well, I've spent a little over 100 days at the legislature, so
well, you can ask Representative
it's a little
Asiero.
different from the Lowell City Council or local government. I would say it will take several months, if not. I would say 6 months, but I don't know. You know, it's reaching out.
That's a better answer than years. That's what I wanted to find out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Sam Polton, Precinct 4. Through the moderator to our state representative.
Can you speak up, Mr. Polton? Can you speak up?
Certainly. Through the moderator to our state representative. First of all, Rep. Elliott, very familiar with your excellent record in Lowell. Glad that you're bringing that to Chelmsford now. Thank you very much for addressing this problem. First question, you mentioned Representative Arciero, who of course not only represents Chelmsford, but also Westford. Do you anticipate opposition from the Westford representative to try to derail this homeroom petition? And if you do, what can we do?
As I mentioned, Mr. Polton, we deliberated the budget for the last 3 days and nights in Boston, and I just had a recent conversation with Representative Arciero, and he will be a co-sponsor of this bill.
Outstanding. He deserves a round of applause for that.
I had him in a headlock at the time, but it was 12 o'clock at night, but he did say he will co-sponsor this bill. Yes, he will.
Right. And my second question is just clarification, because in listening to your presentation, am I correct in assuming that there is absolutely no revenue that Chelmsford derives from this business? It appears, looking at the map and listening to you, that we are currently a drive-through, if you will, so that a plant which is not particularly welcome in Westford can engage in a for-profit activity for which we don't share any of the profits. Is that correct? No tax, no profit, no use fee, just use our road.
Sure. I'm here as a state representative. I would defer to, the town manager on that. I believe I know the answer, but Mr. Manager, I would defer to you.
Your understanding is correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How you doing? Ken Tassi, Precinct 2, through the monitor to the speaker. I would like to just speak in behalf of, there's the quarries that are up there. Of course, Newport being the biggest one and being the most that travels dealing with the asphalt company. But there are a small business back there that needs this road. It's always been there. That quarry is 6 or 5 generations long. My house, that was built with that granite. Most of this town was built with that granite. Excuse me. Oh. So I just feel that quarry and that small owner that's back there with Newport has been there prior to Route 3. These people, I do feel bad for the traffic, but who was there first? The quarry was there first. And if you look at all the things that quarry does, first of all, that granite is referred to as Chelmsford granite. You look it up, you can Google it. It's everywhere. It's in DC, it's Faneuil Hall. It's actually the stone that this state governor picked to be at the Cathedral of the Pines on that altar. It is a famous granite. It is a granite that's been there long before those houses. I just feel that the weight of this granite, it's a very dense, and you will literally wipe out that single owner that's back there with that big company. I don't care about the big company. I care about the little guy that's been there all along. And I just think that this would destroy him. Also, I'd like to point out, I saw what that was. I think that there might be another side to this coin. I understand how large the trucks are that are there. I went there already myself and viewed what was going on. You're going to end up with smaller trucks and more of them because they need everyone around here who's done construction, you need that aggregate. You're going to need it for drainage. You need it for everything. It ain't going to stop. So I just wanted to point that out because you're not going to hurt the Newport there. You're going to hurt the little guy that's behind him who's been there all along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, Chris Garahan. I've got some concerns related to this article. I certainly fully understand that it's a serious problem on what's going on out there. But my concerns relate to the restrictions that we may have some unintended consequences if we pass this specific article tonight. We could have some unintended consequences on that small business, LeMajor Quarry. I mean, they've been there for multiple generations, over 100 years. And if we put this restriction in place, that may cause them to have some very serious financial distress. And number two, again, is that this restriction on the weight, that might in fact cause the unintended consequence of increasing dramatically the truck traffic as we have more and more vehicles going up and down that road instead of having some of these larger vehicles. So there might in fact be a dramatic increase in truck traffic, which is not what anyone wants to intend. And then thirdly, I would say that I think we really need to look at the ingress and egress at that site and really look closely at Route 40, the access through Westford, having some of that traffic when it comes off Ledge to go up to Flint's Corner in Westford. Why does it all 100% come down through Chelmsford? And can we do something about that road so we could actually have a fair amount of traffic go up to that Flint's Corner? It's just up the road in Westford. And then take a look again at some sort of longer-term solution to get the truck traffic going off into commercial space and not through the residences. So again, law of unintended consequences, that's my concern. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Alvin Draymond, Precinct 7. Just some questions and then a very brief comment. The trucks that were shown there, do you know roughly what tonnage those are when full? Are they well beyond the number that's in the home rule petition, I guess?
Yes.
Okay. So are those standard asphalt trucks which would discourage an asphalt business because those are standard trucks and you just can't use anything smaller and still be in the asphalt business? So could small trucks work for the granite business but not for the asphalt business? I don't know enough about the...
I'm not in the asphalt business either, sir, but I can tell you, I actually hold a commercial driver's license, and you need a CDL for anything over 26,000 gross vehicle weight, empty. So these vehicles are at that empty, and when, depending upon how much gravel or crushed stone or whatever the soil or mineral is, that increases. So, does that answer your question?
Probably good enough. Okay. Could we possibly go back to the map slide? Thank you. Looking at that, there's a really tiny distance between, or from where the actual quarry is and the asphalt company is to Route 3, which is probably really where all the trucks want to go. Is there a possibility that ramps could be installed right there and the whole problem disappears? And that was my comment, so I guess you should have started the clock for that, but I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you could possibly address that.
Prior to me becoming an elected official, there's been numerous meetings with Mass Highway. I have met with Department of Transportation, and there are requirements. I mean, that's a highway. I don't believe it's an interstate, but it's governed by Mass regs. And whether it's traffic counts, whether it's distance, the likeliness is not good to put a ramp on specifically for trucks, just this particular issue. So I hope that answers your question. This was discussed before. I am happy to, that's it, okay.
Joe Reddy, Precinct 8. Several of the reps already kind of touched upon it, which was kind of the unintended consequences, which is what I was thinking about here. Is there ways for the asphalt plant to access their property other than this Swain Road?
The question, the concern from my meetings with the managers and the town is, the town of Westford does not want to presumably open this permit. It was a legal struggle, as we know, as closely as I followed it, to get the permit. And there very strict restrictions. There are reporting requirements. There are cameras that monitor the trucks that are going in and out. They're required to go in one particular direction. So considering it's operating in Westford, I would say the town of Westford, and by the way, I did speak just this afternoon to the regional director of Mass Department of Environmental Protection. They do not permit gravel removal, or that is a local issue, so that would be the town of Chelmsford, and they should be, again, because both operations are taking place in Westford, and they're using Ledge Road as a means of access because they are restricted by the number of vehicle trips that can go in and out of the asphalt plant.
So by being restricted by the number of trips that can go in and out, even if they were to get smaller vehicles, they could still only send the same number of vehicles?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Fall, Precinct 7. A previous question asked most of my questions I wanted, but I do have one question. Is this, you're saying you want to restrict the weight limit on the roads. Can we legally stop commercial traffic on that road?
Mass Code of there are provisions in the existing regulations to restrict truck vehicles. It's done in many communities. The requirement is in that community to provide an alternative route. So those, in my opinion, those businesses are operating in West. It's their responsibility to find that alternative route for those businesses, not the town of Chelmsford.
And there's also
Town of Chelmsford doesn't permit. Town of Chelmsford doesn't permit, doesn't regulate, doesn't benefit. So there needs to be an alternative route. That's on the town of Westford, in my opinion.
And also, I was wondering, what is the fine if you break the law on that and, exceed your weight limit on a truck?
Forgive me, I do not know that.
Chief Spinney, you have any idea?
I don't know that. $55 per violation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Laura Amundson. I'm Precinct 1. I've never really been a big fan of public speaking, but I'm very passionate about this. I am the face of Swain Road, okay? I am a resident there. I was raised in Chelmsford. I know what a beautiful town this is. That's why I moved back to raise my children here. I love our home, and I want to, thank you so much, State Representative Rodney Elliott, for helping us. And I know the Select Board has tried to help, and all the neighbors have really come together to bring this forward. And, I could kind of go over all the math figures that I put together and that you had put up on the screen, but it really it's like a 388% increase in terms of exponentially in terms of these trucks that are going by. They go by in different directions on Swain Road. It starts before dawn. It's 6 days a week. It's profiting a company in the town of Westford. And it adversely affects Chelmsford residents, loyal taxpayers, and we are just really asking and thanking people to help us with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Miller, Precinct 3. Just to clarify so things don't get a whirlwind, I got no skin in this game, but Newport does not use Ledge Road for asphalt. They go to Route 40. And when they were getting that plant in, and Chelmsford stuck their nose in it and said, we don't want the traffic on Route 40, some of the selectmen were there, and they decided, okay, so we're gonna give you a truck count. If they didn't do that, all the trucks would have been coming out to Route 40, which is next to Route 3, and that's the way it should have been. And here it is. These are working quarries. The only thing that comes down those roads is stone that are being sold to other people. Newport gets their stone, and they truck it through a back road. I've been there. They use end dumps, which aren't registered. They don't go on the road. It goes to their plant. There's never been asphalt come down Ledge Road. Just to be clear. Like I said, I have no skin in the game, but people are talking about Newport and their asphalt coming down. It's never. They go out to Route 40, and you can monitor it all you want. These quarries have been there for hundreds of years. I don't know how you can stop it in the legislature when it's grandfathered. I know that they're in Westford. The road is in Chelmsford. They should have stopped this 75 years ago. So let's just be clear. The asphalt goes out to Route 40, and they get their stone. They bought LeMageries, not Gilmette's, and they get their stone and truck it through the woods to their asphalt plant. Just want to make sure everybody's clear. That's it.
Thank you.
Good evening. Susan Olson, 140 Groton Road. Thank you, Representative Elliott. I appreciate all you've done in the short period of time that you've been in the legislature. Also the Select Board and others that have helped us with the mitigation of this truck traffic. I have lived in my home for 48 years. My home is located right at the intersection of Main Street, Groton Road, and Swain Road. So I get trucks coming from all different directions. The gentleman who just spoke about the asphalt plant, we don't see many trucks at all with asphalt. However, we see granite, we see aggregate. There was a truck today that I called the company because they were spilling dirt, sand, it was sand, off the truck that was not covered. I mean, this is a daily occurrence. We are woken at 5 o'clock in the morning with the pounding of the trucks, the speed coming down Groton to get onto Swain. They go all day long. My husband has posted many a video on Facebook that they're averaging like 3 minutes apart with the trucks. And it's hundreds of trucks. We can't sit outside. We can't enjoy our home. It's really to a point where it's intolerable. And I sympathize with, you know, the truck drivers that they can't get in. They're going to have to find some other way, in my opinion. They work with Newport, work with Mr. DeFelice. I'm not saying the asphalt portion of it, but we've got to start working together here because it hasn't worked at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ginger Skoog, Precinct 5. Mr. Moderator, through you to the Speaker. Mr. Representative, thank you very much for being responsive. It is really a nice thing that we're starting to feel here in Chelmsford, that our representatives are dipping down a little bit more into some of these more intimate issues. I have a question about the information about the number of trucks and things that have gone on here. Did the traffic study, I can't remember from the slides before, but did the traffic study distinguish between the asphalt trucks and the granite trucks, or was it just trucks in general?
The analysis, the study was on vehicles.
Okay,
Correct.
just straight vehicles.
Correct.
Okay. So if, for instance, the Newport trucks were coming out and using this route, they would have been tracked by the monitoring, but the other trucks that are mixed in with those, if they're using those, would be are they indistinguishable, or at least in the study they're indistinguishable?
Correct.
Do you know if there was any thought to separating out which, sort of which trucks were which? I don't even know if you can tell. I mean, I assume Newport wants to put Newport on the side of theirs, but who knows?
I can speak to just my experience.
Sure.
And I have been out there not once, I've been out there dozens of times because I would like to see, I'd like to observe if I'm going to move forward on this. To speak to that gentleman's point, I cannot say that I've seen any asphalt vehicles going in and out. And on more than one occasion, I've received emails with pictures. It's gravel, it's crushed stone, and if you look at the data from May of 2017 and the escalation of vehicles on those various roadways, it's significant, attributed to the quarry.
Got it. So, Mr. Speaker, you may start the clock. I've been going back and forth on this, and for a moment I was kind of elated because you mentioned the monitoring, and then we realized, wait, that's just monitoring for Newport, and that has, in my mind, a problem here that we can't separate these things, and by restricting the weight of these trucks, we're not going to have any other mechanism to then restrict the number of trucks. That we're just going to see, I'm afraid we're just going to see an increase from these companies of sending the same amount of product out and seeing that just in smaller loads. And a lot of those smaller trucks are ones that we often see that aren't covered. They're the ones that, you know, they take up a little bit more time with a larger load. So I've got some real concerns about this because I can't see how, once this goes into effect, we have the second part of the stick that says, now companies, you need to go to Westford and make them give you a route that you can take. And I'm just not sure that we're there yet on a viable solution. And I feel like moving this petition at this time is potentially going to put us back here in 6, 12, 18 months, and we're going to actually be talking about the exact same thing and maybe even more trucks. So I think that we're on the right track, but
1 minute.
I just don't see that we quite got it tightened down to where putting this through is going to actually force these companies to use the Westford roads or a better access to Route 3. Thank you very much.
Thank
Feel
you.
free to comment.
Mr. Moderator, can I respond?
No.
Okay.
You can't argue from the podium. You can only answer questions.
Sounds good.
All set? Judy Carvin, Precinct 8. Mr. Moderator, through you to the Speaker. Are there any representatives here from Newport? Pardon me? Okay.
I am,
Are there
if
any
your question is to me, I am not aware of any representatives.
So that would be a no.
Here from
Are there any
Newport.
representatives here from the town of Westford?
I am also not aware of that.
Okay, so let's assume no. These are the two entities that created this problem.
Are you on debate now?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Elliott. These are the two entities who have created this problem. We are the victims. This is a good proposal, Representative Elliott. I thank you so much for your interest, for taking this under your wing. It's about time. What I would like to see is to have Mr. Elliott at the state level, town manager, select board, town council, put your heads together and figure out how we're going to push this back to the responsibility of the Newport Industries and the town of Westford. This should never have happened to us. Thank you. It takes an awful lot to jar my preserves, and it has happened. It has happened. I'm wondering if somehow all of you can figure out a way to present Newport Industries a cease and desist until this matter is satisfied to the residents of the town of Chelmsford. Can it be done? Can it not be done? I don't know.
Yeah, with all due respect,
Yes.
we're getting beyond the scope of the article, which is not to explore other solutions to this
Okay.
problem. Otherwise, we will be here next month.
Oh, okay, all right, I'm just, thank you, Mr. Moderator, I'm sharing my thoughts. So this is a good start, but it's not the end. The resolve will take quite a bit of time,
1 minute.
and I, for one, want them to feel the pain.
Thank you.
My name is Valentine Pager. I'm a resident of Ledge Road, so I do have skin in the game. And thank you, Representative Elliott, for all the work that you've done, and thank you to the board and to the town manager for all the effort that's gone into bringing this article forward. But I want to clarify a few things because we have gotten off track here. Okay, the Newport paving operation and recycling operation that's located in Westford has nothing to do with this. Those trucks are not coming our way. By the way, just to clarify it, I live on Ledge Road. My house is located about 50 feet from the edge of the street. That should be a sufficient location for any residential neighborhood in the town of Chelmsford, the town of Westford, anywhere in Massachusetts. By the way, we have rights just like the quarries have rights. The quarries have had this all along, and it all goes in their favor, and they've shown no interest in doing anything to work with us. So, what are the real problems? The real problems are not just outbound. It's not just stone. It's not just gravel going outbound. 40% of the trucks, and I can prove that, by the way, because I too have data. I have cameras that run 24 hours a day. I can tell you on every day what time the first truck comes down Ledge Road. Usually it's about 5:15, 5:30. Roars past my bedroom window. And everybody else's bedroom window, by the way. There's 20+ families that live on Ledge Road. So how many trucks are there? There's about 150. On Wednesdays it gets a little heavy, so it might get up to 175. But remember, it's a dead end. So it's 2 trips. So double that number. The majority of the trucks, the majority now, are 18+ wheelers, fully loaded. And by the way, 40% of them are inbound loaded. Yes, that's the part that's not being talked about here. They're inbound loaded because they're going to the quarry to be reprocessed. They're dumping loads of debris from other construction jobs.
You have 1 minute,
working on
sir.
the roads. I'm sorry?
You have 1 minute.
Okay. So I ask that as you decide whether to vote or not, to take the last comment that was made before me. We have to start to turn the tables so that the quarries are interested in talking to us. Right now, they're not. 5:30, 7:30, 6 days a week, sometimes on Sundays. We have to turn the tables. This is Westford's problem. It is not Chelmsford's problem. Send it back to Westford.
Thank you.
Will Wagner, Precinct 3. You can start the clock. I have to say I do feel for the people on Ledge Road. On the other hand, those quarries have been there for well over 100 years in some cases. It's not like this is new. I understand the quarries are in Westford, and I do thank the previous speaker for mentioning the fact that this has nothing to do with the Newport asphalt plant. So everyone who is up in arms about the Newport asphalt plant, this has nothing to do with the Newport asphalt plant. Newport has a delivery system using their own back dirt road to get from the quarry to the plant with their aggregate for the plant. So this is just the aggregate coming in and leaving the plant. As I said, the quarries have been there, and this is more than just the Graves quarry, which is what Newport runs right now. It's also another smaller quarry on the other side of Route 3. So as one of the previous speakers mentioned, a family-run business, a lot smaller than Newport. I do feel for the people of Ledge Road. I do think that we need to look at some remediation of some sort. I don't think banning the trucks and stranding them in the quarry, because there is literally no way out of that quarry if it doesn't go through Ledge. If you look at Google Maps, you can see exactly what it is. The quarry is a dead end at the end of Ledge Road. So yes, the quarry should be held accountable. Yes, these trucks going down the street at 5:30 in the morning are a pain point, and we should do something about it. I don't think that banning trucks over a certain weight is the correct answer at this time. I think we need to investigate. We need to work with them. People who said this will bring the quarries to the table, yeah, it will bring them to the table with lawyers with lots of deep pockets and saying, stop right there, we're going to stop you from doing this.
1 minute.
Thank you. So I think realistically, we need to work with the quarries, but I don't think that this is the right answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Latinez, Precinct 9. Mr. Moderator, through you to Representative Elliott, thank you for coming first.
Can you tell us what percentage of this material is going for state road projects, town road projects, federal projects? Do you have any idea?
Mr. Latino, I don't know that answer. That would be, business information that we'd have to get from the owners of the quarry.
Okay.
I did ask DEP again today if there are reporting requirements, and those reporting requirements would be with the local permitting authority, which would be Westford.
And
I think it's worthy of a question, perhaps to the town manager's office. I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't believe, I will certainly give it my best effort to try to find out what projects are receiving materials. And if I can get that information, I will certainly bring it forward, but I think it would be...
And there was a discussion about 100 trucks leaving. I was struck by the several trucks coming in with material. But the trucks leaving, these giant trucks leaving, double-sized trucks leaving, I'm assuming that's not putting gravel in my driveway or by my swimming pool if I have one. I'm assuming it's state, federal, and so on. Is that reasonable? You have a CDL license.
If I can respond, and I'll try to include sort of some comments relative to, is this a Band-Aid approach, and are there going to be smaller vehicles? Vehicles are required to be constructed and handle weight limits. My father-in-law was a owner of a paving company. I cannot foresee smaller vehicles handling very, very heavy materials.
Okay.
It's a little bit more than an economy of scale, but when you're going out to a job, you're not going to have 5 trips of material going back and forth versus 1. These vehicles are built for a purpose. They're used for a purpose. Construction companies are not going to downsize as a result of, to skirt a state law.
So assuming state road projects are using the larger truck, I would assume that's for road beds. That red line at the top of the map here shows us going directly under Route 3, and we're told that we can't do an on-ramp, off-ramp. I've been on Route 90. You can start the clock if you consider this to be discussion. Why can't we, if it's state projects, have a limited only for those trucks going in and out right across that Route 3, north and south, just like they do on Interstate 90, just like they do up in the Granite State. I just went through Manchester. Could you flip the picture to the trucks that are there? Is that picture? We're voting on only allowing the truck in the front by the trash cans. That's a 3-axle truck, I'm assuming. 26,000 pounds is about 10 times the weight of a regular SUV. The big trucks in the background are more than 3 axles, but that big truck in front of that trash can is the size that we're limiting it to. I think those trucks behind it probably carry twice as much material. We're going to end up with twice as many trucks if we do this. The Route 3 interchange with limited, like Interstate 90, would be a better solution if you could do that at the State House, since it's their rocks that we're moving on our town. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to move the question, but there's no one in line, so.
Thank you. Well, wait a second. Hold on.
Make a motion to move the question. Joy Zaharo's Precinct 2.
There's a motion to move the question. That would cease all further debate on that. I'll take just... Oh, no, he assumed when he walked away that nobody else was coming. That's why he walked away. So we have a motion to move the question. I don't know if we have it. We don't have it on the... We do? So a yes vote means to stop all further debate on this and then to vote on the underlying article.
As Moderator Curlin just pointed out, this is not a vote on the actual article. It's whether to end debate, and that seems to be the desire of the town meeting reps.
The motion passes 105 in favor, 30 opposed, so now we will vote on Article 3, I believe. Yes.
Thank you.
As you heard, town meeting reps were questioning Representative Elliott about whether instigating a weight limit would simply cause more trucks to be used. And my sense is you're seeing here that this article is going to pass. It's just the first round in what will be a longer running salvo of control and litigation. Arguably, it's firing a legal warning shot across the bow of those
The article
companies that
passes
are using
117
those
in
roads.
favor, 15 opposed, 4 abstentions.
Sorry. Yeah, no. Thanks. Thank you.
Mr. Manager,
Is that my pen?
Article 4, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 4 is a request to expend $210,000 to replace the boilers at the Center Elementary School. As I noted earlier, this is an issue that arose after the close of the warrant for Springtown meeting and the capital plan was completed. I'm going to turn the presentation over to our Public Works Director, Christine Clancy, who can explain what took place last month and why this needs to be invested. Thank you.
Good evening, thank you. So this is, as Manager Cohen said, a request for additional funding funding for the center school boilers. The center school has an existing system, 2 gas-fired hot water boilers, 1.5 million BTU each. These were installed in 2010. The estimated lifespan of the boiler is approximately 20 years. So we did a Dorr and Whittier study in 2016. At that time, that report indicated that these boilers were in very good condition, no concerns. And we do a 5-year outlook for capital replacement, and this was not really in a horizon whatsoever for replacement.
Excuse me, if you're going to talk, please leave the hall because people can't hear the presentation. Thank you.
So, as I said, we had no plan to replace this within the next 5 years, and potentially with a lifespan of 20 years, we were looking even outwards of 7 to 10 years potentially for replacement. So this past February, and fortunately, I guess it was at the end of the heating season, we did have a heat exchanger, and one of the boilers cracked. It was due to a combustible force unknown as to what caused this. That failure caused irreparable damage to the boiler. We did consult with Airco, and we do not have any reason as to why this one boiler failed. The parts and boilers are outside of any warranty, so we have no repair option, and also they're not under warranty. The boiler, the center school does operate on one boiler, but under extreme cold temperatures, especially in the winter, we are required to have 2 boilers. So the recommendation is to replace both boilers, and that is because both boilers really work together. If you replace one, you really want to have both working together. We also want to replace the controls. We are proposing to install 2 new Airco boilers for a total cost of $210,000. And we will be able to reuse some of the controls, reuse some of the valves, the piping. So this is really seen as the most cost-effective option to replace these boilers. As I said, this was really an unknown cost, and that's why this request is coming now at the special town meeting. I don't know if there's any questions.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Unanimously recommends approval of Article 4.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
Select Board unanimously recommends approval of warrant Article 4.
Any questions or discussion?
Hi, Tom Amiro, Precinct 5. It's my understanding that the boilers at the Harrington School, they're being replaced as well. And some people were saying, well, why, didn't you take the opportunity to replace them with electric, carbon emitting? And I heard that the cost was just astronomical because it required the electrical system to be upgraded and even the feed coming in from the street, and it was like a couple $1 million.
That is
that the
correct.
case?
Yes, we did not look at it for the center schools because this is really an unknown cost, but I would say it would be similar. We looked at the Harrington School boilers, and that was proposed for $316,000, replacing it as gas. If we look at electric, just given the load that is required, we'd have to completely replace the electrical all the way from the street. As you know, our schools that school was in the 60s. So we also would have to replace the switchgear, which right now we're looking at how to maintain it. So we estimate $2 million if we were to look at replacing electric in place of the current gas-fired boilers.
Okay, thank you. So just to verify, so the issue is the same at the center school? That
Correct.
It would be,
We think it's a problem probably across all schools, and it is
All right.
something that we're looking to see,
Then-
what.
So, given that the life span of these gas-fired boilers is maybe 15 years, when 15 years from now, when we're getting so much closer to 2050 and, in dire straits to get to net zero emissions, will we, in the meantime, are we going to have any plan to upgrade the electrical in these schools and in these buildings so that we can make the transition to non-fossil fuel systems?
Yes, so we are actually right now looking at a grant opportunity or potential earmark opportunity with the state to look at what we call an electrification roadmap on how we can get to 2050 in our schools and also in our town buildings. It's on for actually proposal just for Monday's select board meeting. So that will hopefully build a roadmap for how we get to 2050 and the costs associated with that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn Thorne Jr., Precinct 4, through you, Mr. Moderator. I see that the last bullet says that the second boiler, that's still functional, so I understand we got a replacement in pairs. But is the intent to keep it for an upcoming need that you foresee?
So the second boiler is still functioning, and we have air codes all around in many of our schools. So we want to retain it just for parts even, or if we ever had to use it as a backup. Because it is useful to us, there's no need to sell it right now. There are times where we can, if a heat exchanger goes out in one, we might be able to take it and swap it in another school as well.
And that was going to be my second question, have you looked at what you could recover for some costs of potentially selling that second boiler?
We have not, because we just think it has value. It's given the age, I mean, like I said, it should have lasted another 7 to 10 years, or 7 years at least. Given the age, I mean, you could probably sell it for parts, but we just think there's value in retaining it since we have air codes in other schools as well.
Okay, and those air codes are of the same year vintage, so it would be a matching pair, because like we were saying here, these have to be replaced in pairs. Do we have other ones that if we have another individual failure, this one would be an adequate replacement for that?
I mean, there might be some components of the boiler that have the same parts, so sometimes we can take parts and utilize them in other boilers. For the heat exchanger here, we want to replace both boilers, and it's just because the newer boilers have different components. So from a controls purpose, it's recommended to replace both boilers. But there would potentially be use in the second boiler at other schools, depending on what part we would be using.
But you don't see any upcoming emerging needs, it's just going to be kind of set aside?
Correct, yeah, this isn't for emergency. And so our plan is to do this project this summer, ahead of the heating season. And like I said, we can operate on one boiler. So, I mean, the only fortunate thing is this didn't happen in the middle of the winter. This happened at the end of February. And so as far as we want to have this up and running before the heating season, because in the heating season, we do need at times 2 boilers.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alvin Draymond, Precinct 7. This is more addressed to Town Manager Cohen. The motion is that you transfer $150,000 from the Finance Committee Reserve Fund. Which year's reserve fund are we talking about? Is that part of the $400,000 that we just put in?
No, it's for the current, it's for the current reserve fund that expires in 2 months from now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? There being none, we will vote on Article 4 to appropriate $150,000 from the Finance Committee Reserve Fund for heating boilers for the Center Elementary School. Article passes 124 in favor, 1 opposed. Well,
So you still got
12
time.
minutes, 12 minutes, sorry. 12 seconds. It still passes. 129 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstention. Article 5.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 5, the last article on the warrant for the special town meeting, is a request to appropriate and borrow $550,000 for the renovation of the McCarthy School kitchen. We've been working, meaning Public Works Director Clancy, Kathleen Canavan, our Facilities Director, Dr. Lang, our Superintendent, who's here with us this evening as well, Brian Curley at School Facilities. As we noted, we're working on updating the kitchens at our high school and also at the McCarthy Middle School with the transition coming in this fall. And there's additional funding that's needed to complete this project. And I'm going to turn the presentation over once again to Public Works Director Christine Clancy.
Thank you. This request is for additional funding for the McCarthy Kitchen renovations project. In FY23 as a capital project, there was a funding in the amount of $438,355 for the renovations of the McCarthy Kitchen. As Manager Cohen said, we have started the design for this and also the high school kitchen renovation project. We're under contract with the designer JTA to develop a detailed design documents. Right now, we're about 60% complete with the design documents. Also at 30%, we received a detailed cost estimate, estimating the overall cost of the project. I will get into detail as the reason for this additional funding request, but through this design effort, we have seen substantial cost increases from what was originally requested in the FY23 capital. This construction is planned for this summer, so we do want to fast track this project, get it completed this summer. The McCarthy Kitchen project, continue to design the high school project, but it is still a separate project. So with that 30% design cost estimate, the current estimated construction cost is approximately $1 million, or $545 a square foot. And that is reasonable with current construction prices. I think everyone knows especially through COVID, construction costs have increased and really, I guess, in some cases continue to increase. And so $545 a square foot seems to be within reason of our current costs. So as far as reasons for cost escalation, so as I said, just general industry and cost increases. Inflation itself went up 8.5%, but there were some items that went up 100% plus. So we're seeing that across a lot of our DPW projects in town, where bids are coming in above, in some cases above what we've estimated. We're also seeing limited contractor bids, and so that is something that is also potentially driving up contracts, because contractors can be more competitive maybe, or don't have to be as competitive. They have there's so much work, so that is also one reason for the increase in construction costs. We looked particularly at the kitchen equipment costs. So the Parker, a similar Parker school, there was a kitchen upgrade in 2021. And just looking at those sole costs, the costs increased by 60% just from 2021. So that was partially a significant increase that we saw in this I guess, when we hadn't anticipated that increase. We also have about $100,000 that we need to spend to upgrade hood or install a hood to bring the kitchen up to code. There's also costs with the grease oil water separator that needs to be installed exterior to the building. And I think also, in addition to those cost escalations due to the industry, this has turned into, I think, a more complex project than we anticipated from the 2016 Doran Whittier report. This is really a full renovation. We're looking at flooring, ceilings, not just kitchen equipment. So I think that also has added some elements in terms of cost escalation. And that's, any questions?
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 5.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of Warrant Article 5.
Okay, any questions? There being none, we will vote to appropriate some funds to renovate the McCarthy School kitchen, $550,000. This requires a 2/3 vote.
This will be the last vote under the special town meeting warrant, these sort of extra articles that have been asked for approval tonight. And then we'll move back to the regular town meeting, which has still 10 articles remaining.
Article passes 132 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions. I will entertain a motion to adjourn the special town meeting. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We will now resume our spring town meeting. Article 22.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Early in the packet is slides for Article 22. And then what we have remaining for us is essentially all the community preservation articles with the exception of one conservation easement. The Article 22 is the standard article that comes at beginning of every spring annual town meeting regarding the Community Preservation Committee. It's basically appropriating the funds to the allocated 10% reserves, funding the debt service, and the $50,000 administrative fee for the required by the Commonwealth. Our town accountant has worked with the Community Preservation Committee. This is our estimate for what we'll expect to receive in the upcoming fiscal year for community preservation funding. Roughly $1.4 million from the town and $385,000 from the state, or roughly $1.8 million. We're required to set aside, again, 10% of that 1.45 to each of the required components under the state statute and a budgeted reserve. Here's the existing debt service we need to pay off under this motion. It's $400,605, and it's for the projects, as you can see there, Varney Playground, Roberts Field, Chelmsford Woods, the turf fields, and Warren Pole. The parentheses on the right indicates the last year of debt service for those projects. So you can see we have very little debt remaining on Varney Playground, and obviously a ways to go with the Warren Pole property. And again, remember, the town pays level dollar debt, so our interest cost over time goes down as a project's debt service is paid off, unlike a conventional mortgage where it's level. So that's under this article as well. So that's the request under this article, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
There we go. The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 22.
And does the Select Board have a recommendation?
Select Board unanimously recommends approval of Warrant Article 22.
Any questions? There being none, we will vote to approve the annual community preservation plan for this year for fiscal year 2024.
Thank you.
Votes on Community Preservation Fund projects have become an annual activity here at the Springtown meeting and fall sometimes, using the dollars that are collected from real estate transactions to fund community projects that are worthy and otherwise would be hard-pressed to find funds for doing so.
Article passes unanimously, 126 votes in favor. Article 23.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 23 is a land acquisition. This is for a parcel of landlocked land located along Stony Brook. It's 1.34 acres. It's requested by the Conservation Commission. The acquisition price is the current assessed value of the land, which is $28,900, and it's 1.34 acres. As I mentioned, the town owns the adjoining land if you were to go upstream or up on the parcel. So we own the adjoining parcel up here, and then obviously this would expand the conservation corridor by acquiring the parcel by the X. And then I think the hope is that in the future, the commission will look to further acquire the adjoining land along Stony Brook, again, to expand the wildlife conservation corridor. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. The Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 23.
The Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of warrant Article 23.
Any questions, comments? There being none, we will vote to approve the purchase of land off Wilson Lane. This does require a 2/3 vote. Article passes 124 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions. Article 24.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The request by the Community Preservation Committee under Article 24 is to replenish the fund that it sets aside for the rehabilitation, restoration, improvement of lands for conservation purposes. As I mentioned, the Commission comes to town meeting periodically to replenish the fund. They generally started at a $50,000 level, and then as projects get approved throughout the year or years, then they'll come back to restore the project. And again, the intent of this is to allow for small projects that arise during the course of the year to be funded, rather than bringing minor projects and having them wait till town meeting time. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 24.
Select Committee have a recommendation.
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of warrant Article 24.
Any questions? There being none, we will now vote on Article 24 for the appropriation of $50,000 from the Community Preservation Fund General Reserve for rehabilitation, restoration, or improvement of capital conservation lands. This Article passes unanimously, 130 in favor. Article 25.
Article 25 is a request submitted by the Conservation Commission. This is the one that pertains to the easement, not CPC funding. And this has to do with a property of land located at 2 Shore Drive. And what it is they have a driveway that encroaches on the town's conservation land. This is the, surveyor's map of the property. The town one is to the one, if you're looking at facing it to the right, obviously outside of the trapezoid that has the home there. This is a picture of it right there. And obviously the house is behind the tree, and you can see the driveway there that's on the land. Let me explain what we believe happened here. This home, or the home there in the white, was was owned by the Cossette family for over 70 years. And the driveway existed for decades. And obviously never issue came to buy. The property recently had a transaction. They obviously went for some financing, and they did the mortgage survey came out, and they found that the land transcended the property line. They approached the Conservation Commission, and the commission requested that the means to resolve this with the assistance of town council is to grant an easement for travel for driveway purposes only, meaning they cannot restrict the driveway, they can't park in the driveway, they can only use it for driveway purpose only to the rear portion of the dwelling, as again has been occurring for decades. This map, which excuse me for not being in the parcel, but this came up on our information session, this is to orient you in terms of where the land is. Again, it's adjacent to Stony Brook and off of the lake. So that's what's being requested here under this article, is this would grant the current owner and successors and assigns in the future the right to utilize in that driveway area. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
So the Finance Committee have recommendation?
There we go. The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 25.
Does the Select Board have recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of warrant Article 25.
Sherman Horton, are you hearing me?
Can we have Mike?
Sherman Horton, Precinct 6. Mr. Moderator to the Town Manager, I think you answered this, but why is the Conservation Committee raising this exactly? Because the homeowners went to them?
Yeah, the land is held for conservation purposes, meaning it's under the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission. The homeowners came to them and said, what can we do? And the only means to provide them with the legal means to trespass onto that property would be to have town meeting authorize the granting of an easement, because it's an interest in land, and under state law, the town meeting approval is necessary.
So in some cases, we would have, for example, the member of the planning board come up and say, just like the select board or the thing. So is there some representative from the Conservation Committee who could just confirm that?
Is there anybody from the commission?
And if not, that's
yeah,
fine.
right here. Yeah, Carl Bishop. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Liz Reinowich, Precinct 11. Can you confirm the driveway involved in this easement is on Chelmsford conservation land?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Will Chelmsford receive any tax revenues for allowing this easement?
No.
Will Chelmsford
because the reason is we're not conveying ownership of the land. We're just creating the right for passage.
Right. And can you confirm that the encroachment rule, that 20-year thing, doesn't apply to town land?
Right. Well, I can have council confirm it, because, Paul, we haven't heard from you at this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you to the previous speaker. That is correct. Adverse possession does not apply to town-owned property.
Okay, so there's no financial benefit at all for the town for doing this? Okay. And can you confirm that the easement would, if approved, would be forever and ever and could never be reversed?
Paul?
An easement is a grant of rights in land. It's the same as if there was a transfer of the actual fee interest in the land. It could be reversed theoretically through prescription if there was, it's essentially adverse possession over an easement right. If somehow their ability to use it was blocked, adverse to their right to use it for a period of more than 20 years. Or you could have an agreement between the town and the property owner to extinguish the easement. Other than that, there's no way to get rid of it.
So, but and now we're saying you can have the easement. Do you think the property owner would agree to disallow it after they got it? I mean, I wouldn't. But,
well, I think that's beyond really the scope of anyone here to answer.
I'll get to the point. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so I guess my take on this is by allowing this, I mean, we're giving up the future opportunity of our conservation land. I mean, if school children wanted to go there. There's a lake across the street. I mean, this, we've paid to get conservation land, and here we're giving up this future opportunity. So I feel as a town meeting rep, it's our job to protect the town and the future interest of the town. So I would, I'm going to vote against it because I think we should protect the town more.
Thank you.
Good evening, Kathy Tuberty, Precinct 8. Mr. Moderator, through you to the town manager, just a couple quick questions. Did the homeowners pave the driveway? Should be maintain and then update and repave the driveway?
Yes.
Okay, and have they been mowing the lawn and maintaining the area so that they did not, have they been mowing the lawn?
I don't know. I don't.
It is mowed.
It's mowed. I assume they would.
It is mowed. And
I don't believe the Conservation Commission contracts with
Okay.
anybody to go out there and cut the grass, no.
And had they been aware that this was not their land before this last survey that identified it?
That's not my understanding, like I said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alvin Draymond, Precinct 7. Am I reading the map correctly that there is a driveway access to Shore Drive that's not part of that loop road?
Yes, if you look at it, there's a driveway, you can see where the gentleman is standing. I believe that was our conservation agent, David Coons. But there is a driveway there to the front of the house, yes. But this easement we're talking about is a driveway that you see to the left of the photo, yes.
Okay, the way it's drawn here, it looks like the two connect. Perhaps I'm mistaken.
Yeah, they do.
It's a horseshoe. It's a horseshoe driveway.
So what is the need for that other piece to be part of it? They have the access. Okay, that was a comment, so knock me off for a few seconds, but okay. Do you have any idea why they need that extra access?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Badru Pilipan, Precinct 11. A quick question here on the language. Is the right is being given to the owner of 2 Shore Drive. If that house goes on rent and a rental person comes in, they're not the owners, therefore the resident cannot drive through.
It goes with the land, so it doesn't, if they rent the house, they still have the right to use the driveway. The renters would, yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Sam Polton, Precinct 4. I thought I understood this. I have a quick question that I hope has a simple answer. We're not giving the landowner, the house owner, any easement. He's not giving us any easement rights. A financing issue came up, and there has to be some way to legally prove that they can use that driveway. So the solution is to grant them an easement. It doesn't take away any conservation land, the way I understand it. They can't prevent somebody from crossing the driveway or doing anything. We are giving them the right to simply use an existing driveway, which by my understanding, they could claim they already have a right to because of the 20 years. No. So this is just for the bank to be satisfied that they can use the driveway. Is that right?
No. They have no right of adverse possession, as council spoke earlier.
Okay.
What I'm saying is the issue of the driveway not being on their land became realized when they had a mortgage survey done, and it was pointed out to them that, oh, by the way, your property does not extend to the full extent of that driveway. Hence, they came to the town for the legal right to continue to use the driveway, which is not part of their land.
So this grants them the legal right to use the driveway, doesn't do anything bad to the town.
Only for passage as a driveway, right.
So no adverse effect on the town.
Right.
And we benefit the homeowners' financing.
Well, it has nothing to do with their financing. It just gives them the right to travel across the driveway.
Okay, but
Right. The other option would have been for the Conservation Commission to put a fence up, restrict it, or otherwise prohibit them from using it, and then they would not have had the historic use of the driveway that they had for decades.
And we had the agreement of the Conservation Commission?
Yes, they're the ones who supported it, yes.
Terrific, I hope we vote.
Thank you.
Helen Blasioli, Precinct 2, I think, I don't know, at this point. You can start the clock, because I just want to say that I think everybody in this room should have been at that meeting Wednesday night, and then listened to some of the stupid things that were said, and then they should have gotten their rear end out to look at that. There is no reason why we aren't saying yes to this, because there's no reason that anybody in this town can use that land as you're looking at that driveway to the left. And when you get out there, you're gonna find out that it's only wet because it looks newly paved. It's not, it's an old road. That's all I got to say.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that. But they should start going to the meetings on Wednesday night to know what's going on.
Thank you.
Johanna Shaw, Precinct 9. So if I'm understanding this correctly, by granting this easement, we're basically saying, yes, this can stay as a paved driveway and not really have any use to the town as conservation land. So if that's the case, is there a reason we're not asking the homeowners to just buy this parcel of land from the town so that there's no question of right of access and then we get tax revenue from it?
Well, the additional, I mean, that is always an option. The additional tax revenue would be minor for the additional land that's there. So I don't think it's really a major financial concern to the town. Like I said, the discovery was that it was part of a larger piece of conservation land the town owns. And my sense is the commission saw this as the preferred solution rather than conveying and selling off a parcel of conservation land. You know, so I think that's the choice.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, apparently there's no one else, so we will now vote on Article 25, which has to do with a driveway encroaching on conservation land. This requires a 2/3 vote to allow the adjacent homeowner to have an easement for the sole purpose of using that driveway. Article passes 110 in favor, 21 opposed, 1 abstention. Article 26.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 26 is a community preservation funded article. The Community Preservation Commission requests and supports the request from the town clerk for a transfer of $275,000 for the preservation of the town's vital historic records. Many of you may recall, having been at previous town meetings, that back in 2013, town clerk Honorina Maloney brought in the Northeast Document Conservation Center and did a full assessment of the town's vital records. And then periodically they've come back to town meetings since then to do another batch of the town's vital records because some vital records have to be lawfully preserved, maintained, and stored. And yes, while they're doing this, they do digitize them, but we do need to retain those records. This is sort of some of the condition of some of the vital records that need attention in the community. You may have seen these pass. These, for example, are tax records that go back to the 1700s and into the mid-20th century. And then what you see on the right, and there are the finished results of this work to preserve the town records. So again, the request is the funding to do the next phase of preservation of the town's records. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Does Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 26.
Select Board have a recommendation.
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of warrant Article 26.
Anyone have any questions regarding this article? There appear to be none. We will now vote on a request to appropriate $275,000 from the Community Preservation Fund General Reserve for the preservation of the town's vital historic records. Article passes 126 in favor, 4 opposed, and 1 abstention. Article 27.
Article 27 is, again, funded from the Community Preservation Fund. It's now for another playground, and this is to address the Highland Playground. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to our Public Works Director, Christine Clancy, who's overseeing this project.
Thank you. So this is the existing location of the Highland Park playground. It is located right adjacent to James Street. It's in North Chelmsford. It's also adjacent to the Chelmsford Housing Authority. This is an existing condition picture of the playground. This is about 15 years old, and the lifespan of equipment is typically 15 to 20 years. So this really has reached its end of its life. We also do have some issues or concerns with some of the equipment. There is a tire swing that does not drain water, it holds water. It's not mentioned here, but we do have with DPW, we have a playground inspector that goes around inspecting all the playgrounds, and we have to have certain clearances around certain structures. And this tire swing, as it exists right now, we're short a couple feet with the necessary clearance around this structure. There's 2 domes there, and one of the dome has damage on the structure itself. And this is the existing swing at the playground, and we have a compliance issue here as well. Again, our playground inspector routinely inspects all playgrounds in town, and this is something that he recently identified. And so, as you can see in this picture, like I said, there's certain distances you need surrounding equipment, especially swings, swing distance or swing span. So the existing height of this swing is 12 feet, and you need twice that height around in front and behind the structure. We only have 15 feet, so that makes us non-compliant. So we do need to look at addressing that. We did also look to see if it's possible to remove the equipment and relocate it within the existing footprint. We consulted actually with a contractor on that, and just given the age of the equipment, we feel as though extraction of the equipment, it probably would not survive being able to be put back into the ground. This is another picture of the existing playground. So we did reach out to some vendors just to look for some potential schematic designs or designs of a new layout. Similar to the existing equipment, a tire swing, 1 dome, as you can see in the corner, and also putting back a new swing set, all being brought up so that it's in compliance to have the necessary distances or clearances around the structures. Also, all new equipment. This is just another, this is a plan, aerial plan showing the clearances around the structures, and these are the clearances that we would need to achieve to be in compliance. We put together a cost estimate for this. I know the request is $50,000, and here's just a breakdown primarily for the equipment, the installation. DPW would do the demolition of the playground in-house, estimated $5,000 in-kind services. Also installation of playground safety chips, plastic borders, ADA mats. We do put ADA mats under the tire swings, also under the swing itself. So estimated $46,200 or approximately $50,000 is the request. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 27.
Select Board have a recommendation.
Select Board unanimously recommends approval of warrant Article 27.
Anyone have any questions? Apparently not. So we will now vote on Article 27 to fund $50,000 from the Community Preservation Fund General Reserve for the purchase and installation of new playground equipment at the Highland Playground.
She didn't see, she's not the thief. So, yeah, I know. Let's see, I wiped this here. If she was the thief.
Wasn't he ever a kid? Article passes 125 in favor, 4 opposed, no abstentions. Article 28.
Article 28 is a request, again, through the Community Preservation Committee to transfer $8,000 in community preservation funds for the preservation of headstones at Forefather Cemetery. And again, this comes from the cemetery, Director of Cemeteries, David Boyle, obviously with the support of the Cemetery Commission. And this is to do a batch of headstones at Forefather Cemetery that you can see are in various states of disrepair. And so again, similar to the archiving thing, they'll come back periodically to do another batch in order to preserve the historic location there in our town center. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 28.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
Select Board unanimously recommends approval of warrant Article 28.
Anyone have any questions regarding the proposed transfer of $8,000 for preservation of headstones for Forefather Cemetery? There being none, we'll take a vote on this. The article passes 127 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions. Article 29.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 29, Community Preservation Article, and this is a request to transfer $47,250 in community preservation funds for the creation of a walkway along Beaver Brook at 1 Billerica Road, 44 Central Square. That is the municipal parking property that town meeting previously approved last year, fiscal year. And this is to create the brook walk along the side of that brook in the center behind the Oddfellows building. This is in keeping with the Center Village Master Plan. And again, the town, at previously town meeting, accepted an easement as granted by the planning board approval for the Oddfellows building renovation, where there was a private easement. This is now on the town property that abuts that, and is to create a 36-inch gravel pathway along the brook and in the existing parking lot area that would terminate in a newly created pocket park back behind that area. It's very similar to what you see across the street if you've been by the grist mill on the other side. And so the idea is to clean it up with appropriate, with approval of the Conservation Commission, appropriate wetland plantings and work in that sensitive wetland area to improve the environment and drainage in that area. This is sort of the overview of the envision plan from the master plan covering both sides of the center. Again, to the left would be the gristmill one, which is already constructed, and then you see along to the right is the Oddfellows building when you cross the roadway, and then the municipal parking lot, and then the far right would be area that the town doesn't have control or ownership at this time. That would go all the way out to Summer Street. So that was the vision by the master plan, and again, this is sort of this next phase of that project. These are sort of the detailed drawings that were prepared by the town's engineering division in terms of the area of the pathway for the site. And similar, Public Works has created a cost estimate to do this work within the funds that are created for this project. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 29.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of warrant Article 29.
I have received an amendment to the article. Mr. Stanway, would you like to explain what your amendment is? Yes. It'll be hard to hear you from sitting where you were, so.
Phil Stanway, Precinct 5. When I reviewed the map on this, I looked at the size of the trail, I looked at the park at the end of it for the turnaround, And I looked at the fact there are 2 fences in the middle and it was narrow. So I had some concerns about this. And the easiest way to address all these concerns was to add the words ADA compliant, which would resolve all those issues when they move forward with this. So I'm asking that that be added so we can guarantee it makes minimum ADA standards across the entire trail and is accessible to all users. Thank you.
Ms. Mara, we'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so we don't have to vote on the amendment. So does anyone have any questions? There being none?
Christine McNamara, Precinct 8. I was just wondering about the asphalt pavement. Is it all just going to be gravel on your pathways, or is it? Could you just go into that?
It's
detail?
like stone dust is a better way to describe it. And
Yeah,
much like
so
you
it'll
see
have
it-
really good drainage then. 'cause-
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's no asphalt.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Glenn Thorne Jr., Precinct 4. So kind of tagging off what the previous speaker said, in your response being asphalt, does that mean it will be asphalt or has to be asphalt, or can it be pavers or?
No, it'll be that stone
It'll
dust.
still be the
material.
stone dust.
Yes,
ADA
exactly.
compliant. I
The
guess
parking
it's
lot's asphalt if you go back there, but this is off the parking lot. between
Right,
the
I'm just
parking
asking
street.
an ADA
But it'll be
compliance,
that,
if it
it'll be that
changes,
stone,
kind of.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? There being none, we will vote on Article 29 for the appropriation of $47,250 from the Community Preservation Fund for General Reserve for the creation of an ADA accessible walkway through Beaver Brook. The article passes 129 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions. Article 30.
Mr. Moderator, the final article of the warrant for the spring annual town meeting is Article 30, the Community Preservation Fund. This pertains to the relocation and preservation of the School Street Freight House, and it is actually the favorite article of the chair of the Community Preservation Commission, Linda Prescott. And this is the transfer of $50,000 from the Community Preservation Fund General Reserve for the relocation of the Freight House to 105 Garrison Road. This is the building of the Freight House, for many of you who have had driven by that location. Believe it or not, the building can be preserved, and the Garrison House, who has done a beautiful job in this community preserving structures. I'm sorry, I'll try again. The building can be preserved, and the Garrison House, who has done a beautiful job of preserving buildings at their property on Garrison Road, will undertake this project and pay for the cost of restoration. So the request from the town is to pay the cost basically to transport the building from its current site to the Garrison House property. What that's going to mean is they're basically going to cut the building, into corners and basically move it by pieces. The original intent was to keep it at its current location. The railroad refused to do that because it was too close to their railroad right-of-way. And so the choice was they were going to demo the structure because of its decrepit condition. So again, the Garrison House folks stepped forward. They've had it structurally assessed. So this will, basically, they're out getting bids from people who can move the property, based on flatbed across the community by taking it down in sections and moving it across. And then basically the property would then be filled back in and retained ownership by the railroad. And they said, most importantly, is the Garrison House will restore it to its original condition. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 30.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of warrant Article 30.
Any questions, comments? There being none, we will vote on the final article of the evening, to appropriate $50,000 from the Community Preservation Fund General Reserve for the dismantling, transportation, preservation of the School Street Freight House to the Garrison House property. The article passes 117 in favor, 10 opposed, 1 abstention. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor? All opposed? Look forward to seeing you in October.
Go ahead. Good. Great. Kelly Beatty for Chelmsford Telemedia. It's been a fairly straightforward evening with pretty business-like marching through the, pardon me just a second, as we were marching through the town meeting warrant, both the regular town meeting and the special town meeting, the issue that really drew a lot of attention was one of the special town meeting articles having to do with establishing a weight restriction on Ledge Road so that the trucks, the many trucks that go through there from the asphalt business and the quarries that are in Westford but using that road to get out to and from will be restricted. Drew a lot of attention, a lot of pent-up frustration, I think, from the townspeople who live along that roadway and elsewhere with the volume of those big heavy trucks sometimes starting as early as 5:15, 5:30 in the morning. Representative Rodney Elliott was here from the State House to put forward, it's a home rule petition that has to go before the state, and so he fully supports it. He's our new representative from Chelmsford, representing Chelmsford, and it engendered a lot of discussion, especially not only from the people who oppose it, but also from some of the business owners who are existing there, whose livelihoods might be impacted. It's not the last we've heard about this, I guarantee. One last thing I want to say before signing off. If you were watching the votes, you saw perhaps that there's roughly 130 town meeting reps here. The capacity, the maximum, 15 each for the 11 precincts we have, is 165. From the last election that took place earlier this month, I could tell you that several of the precincts did not have enough town meeting representative candidates. And so for those of you who are watching these proceedings intently and are interested in the give and take that happens here, I encourage you to consider running for one of those town meeting representative spots so that more of these chairs will be filled when we next meet. In the meantime, I wish you all a happy spring. I'm Kelly Beatty, thanking you on behalf of the staff and volunteers of Chelmsford Telemedia. Good night.